Moving right along places us in the warm company of In Dialogue. The respected host here is well known, Mr. Bharat Bhargava. This week, Mr. Bhargava's guest is a world-famous journalist as well as one of the advisors of GTV by the name of Mr. Aziz Haniffa. I'm sure you've come across Mr. Haniffa's name at some point or the other in your life. Well, let's get to meet him a little closer through the eyes of In Dialogue.
Namaskar, I'm Bharat Bhargava. Thanks for joining In Dialogue. As so many of you know, increasingly over the last 25 years, major articles written by Aziz Haniffa have become a part of required reading for so many of us, without which our week would not be complete. Aziz means dear in Arabic, and Aziz Sahab has indeed endeared himself immensely to our vibrant and at times boisterous community with his ultimate professionalism and dedication. Aziz Haniffa, as he is commonly addressed here, is the editor of India Abroad, the oldest and largest paid circulation South Asian newspaper in the US, which is now a publication of a NASDAQ company, Rediff. This is not a commercial. We don't do commercials on In Dialogue, but I do not hesitate to pay tribute to a great periodical to which I have subscribed pretty much since its inception some 40 years ago. Aziz Sahab is also India Abroad's chief political and diplomatic correspondent based in Washington, D.C. He has conducted many exclusive interviews with presidents, prime ministers, senators, congressmen, and other luminaries, including George H.W. Bush and George W. Bush. Here's a picture of Aziz Sahab with President George Bush and Governor Jeb Bush. Aziz Sahab was the only South Asian print journalist to be on the White House press delegation that accompanied President Clinton to India. Here are President Clinton and Aziz Haniffa. He was also the first South Asian journalist to interview Mr. Obama. He has covered Democratic and Republican conventions for the past 2.5 decades. Besides his degrees from his motherland, Sri Lanka, Aziz Sahab has a master's degree from George Washington University. Aziz Sahab has also won many distinguished awards as a journalist. Having been a much sought after speaker with universities, think tanks, and numerous other organizations, and having appeared on CNN, NBC, MSNBC, NBC, and C-SPAN, we figured he was ready for prime time to be our guest at In Dialogue. Lame levity aside, it is my great privilege to have this super icon on our segment we're calling Reminiscing with a journalist par excellence, Aziz Haniffa. Welcome, Aziz Sahab.
Thank you very much, Bharat. A pleasure to be here.
Thanks for taking the time to be with me and with the In Dialogue viewers. I have always valued your reporting greatly, and on a personal note, I'm most grateful for the ink you have so liberally given to me on your paper over the decades, maybe only next to our mutual good friend, late Gopal Raju, the founder of India Abroad.
Absolutely. What a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much. Yes.
So, Aziz Sahab, first thing first, would you care to share some observations about the Prime Minister's recent visit to the US?
I think this visit, unlike the earlier visit, state visit in 2009, was much more of a subdued visit. Of course, both the President as well as the Prime Minister have been having their domestic compulsions and a whole heap of domestic problems. So it was more of sort of an official working visit where they had sort of courtesies exchanged in the Oval Office, and then they all went for a luncheon meeting. And in terms of tangibles, there weren't really too many, except that there was sort of an early works agreement on the nuclear deal, which people have been troubled by because it's taken a long time since the agreement was signed, and there hasn't been any implementation. But I think one of the interesting facets was the fact that there seems to be a growth exponentially in terms of the US-India Defense Cooperation.
Oh, okay.
And so I think that was a real a facet that I think was a huge success in terms of the visit. But it was more of a low-profile visit. There wasn't even the usual press conference with 2 questions each from either side.
Right.
But then, the Syria question was there, and in fact, the president had to seek the prime minister's indulgence in his opening remarks to begin with comments on Syria, even before he started talking on U.S.-India relations. And of course, all the other domestic compulsions, the shutdown was looming, and of course, the shutdown has happened now.
Yes.
So I think it was, in a sense, trying to have some continuity in terms of the visit, and also I think in a way contributing to the legacy of both leaders in terms of the fact that they reinforced the US-India strategic partnership, which really began in a sense with the transformational visit by President Clinton in March 2000.
Right. So it does have some incremental continued reinforcement effect anyway.
Absolutely. I think that was essentially what it was,
Right.
sort of an incremental reinforcing
Right.
of the relationship. Yeah.
So 25 years of journalism is a long time. You observed everything. Would you care to give me, from your own viewpoint, some couple of remarkable things that might have happened over these years?
I think the amazing thing has been both the evolution of the bilateral relationship as well as the immense evolution, remarkable, tremendous evolution of the Indian-American community. And I think, you and I know about the Cold War days, and when India was considered sort of a surrogate of the erstwhile Soviet Union. And then, of course, when things were really improving and it seemed like there was going to be a great relationship between these 2 democracies, there was India's explosion of the nuclear devices in May of 1998, and things went really downhill from there. Then, of course, there was Jaswant Singh, the External Affairs Minister, and Strobe Talbot, the Deputy Secretary of State, who sort of alleviated this to a certain extent. And then, of course, the transformational visit by President Clinton in March of 2000, which I had the great privilege and pride of being part of it.
Right.
And that was just an amazing transformational visit. And I think from then on, everybody's run the ball, and George W. Bush, after he was elected president, really ran the ball. And I think the fact that US-India nuclear deal happened, when it couldn't be even conceived that India, who is not a party to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, could have this kind of a deal with the US, I think was unprecedented. Yes. And I think that really accelerated the relationship.
Yes. Well, you are absolutely an encyclopedia of all the things that have happened. But could you maybe, from your vantage point, see, as this momentum continues, where we're headed, both in terms of relationships, world scenario, as well as Indian-American community?
Yeah, I mentioned the Indian-American community.
Yes.
As you and I know, Bharat, and you were also an administration official in the early years in the Republican administration. I remember when I started covering, doing my diplomatic and political reporting, there were hardly any even interns on Capitol Hill. Today, you've got sort of a congressional club of senior congressional aides who work on Capitol Hill. We have 2 governors, Nimrata Haley, Nikki Haley, and Bobby Jindal, who of course was the first congressman after Dalip Singh Saund after almost 50 years, and then the first ever Indian American governor. And then of course we've got Indian American state legislators, we've got Kumar Barve, our own Kumar Barve here in the city, Maryland state, and then the immense amount of, in a way, the fact that India abroad in those early years, we were very India-centric. Today, the newspaper has grown to become Indian-American-centric. And most of our coverage and reporting and everything else is about the Indian-American community. And also, of course, the political diplomatic writing of US-India relations. And to a great extent, what a bridge, this people-to-people bridge that the Indian-American community. There is undeniable that they have been catalytic in forging this great US-India partnership, which in a way I think has become very irreversible today.
Yes.
There are all the irritants, there are questions on India's relations with Iran, and there are the constant irritants, but I think they can now sit down very candidly and talk about all these issues like US does with some of its major allies.
Right. Personally, at work is there, but what is your joy? Where do you get most kick out of what you're doing?
I think it's been a great ride for me. It was very interesting when I first started as a rookie reporter with India Abroad. It was Gopal Raju, my first editor and publisher. He was really looking for a young guy who could really hustle, who could really run, do those interviews, buttonhole congressmen, senators. And he wanted to push India Abroad out of sort of an ethnic mold and make it into a really mainstream kind of paper, you know, about the community and also about India-US relations. When I started, before I started, I think he had sort of a New York Times guy who was sort of freelancing for him, but he wanted a young guy who could really hustle. And the joke was I really started hustling, you know, and the joke was that he started quickly paying me salary because it was more economical than paying me by the word, because I started filing. So, and it's been a remarkable ride, because in a lot of ways I have grown to not just cover this relationship, but grow with this relationship, grow with the Indian American community, which started just evolving amazingly from just the early doctors, the professionals, the engineers, to the IT people, and now in all facets of mainstream. Today you find Indian American journalists with all the mainstream newspapers, and not just working for these newspapers, they are the editors of some of these major newspapers. You know, we've got Time, we've got Bobby Ghosh with Time magazine, we've got Rajiv Chandrasekharan with the Washington Post, and a whole heap of others with the Wall Street Journal and Farid Zakaria, you know, absolutely. So I think it's been an amazing ride. And I think one of the reasons I also liked working for India Abroad was because I was not buttonhole just into doing politics diplomacy, but I also loved doing all facets of community, covering community conventions, receptions, interactions, etc. So it was a case of throw anything at me, I'm there to cover it.
You are all over, and I'm glad, because your dedication and your relationship with the community has been very personal, which has also been very helpful. So I could, with you, I could go on and on and on, but knowing the length of the program, I wanted to get the real meat out of you, and thank you very much for obliging. It's been a real pleasure to have you, and thank you very much for joining in Dialogue.
It's been an absolute delight. Thank you very much.
Well, folks, you heard Aziz Haniffa, whose byline you see all the time, and it's my privilege to have had him. Do visit www.indialogue.net. You may also write to Bharat Bhargava at indialogue.net or bharatbhargav@aol.com. Have a wonderful day.